Thanks again for tuning in to another Gospel Rescue Mission video podcast. My name is Brian. I'm the Director of Resident Services for the Gospel Rescue Mission, and I am here once again with my good friend, Mr. Kevin Darr from U-Turn for Christ. Tell our audience a little bit about yourself and U-Turn for Christ.
Well, I'm the Executive Director of U-Turn for Christ and the Senior Pastor. So U-Turn for Christ is a ministry that serves those who are in bondage to addiction to drugs or alcohol or just sin in general. And so what we offer is just a biblically based program where the people can come to our program for a minimum of 2 months and be set apart from really the world for a period of time to work on those things that are keeping them from living the life that God would have them to live. So it's just a lot of biblical instruction. It's pretty simple. It's instead of a 12-step program or whatever, what we offer is really a one-step program, and that's just to the foot of the cross. And the way I look at it, my personal philosophy is that if you want to promote lasting change in your life, it's only going to be through Jesus Christ. And so that's kind of what we instill in the men, and here pretty soon women that come into our program is, just trying to make disciples of Jesus. And when you become a disciple of Jesus, all those other things that you struggle with become a whole lot easier, and you see them for what they are. So.
That's good. And so part of one of the reasons we're gathering today to talk is you had alluded to it. There's some new things going on with U-Turn. First of all, how many guys in your men's program can you house, and how many do you typically have?
Well, we can house about 20 out at our ranch. We typically probably run about 12 or so would probably be the average. And
now you have this women's facility of some sort. Tell us a little bit about that.
All right, so we've recently acquired a piece of property that's going to be for it's going to be just like our men's program, but for women. Over the years, we receive as many phone calls for women as we do for men. So, sure. And we haven't been really had the opportunity or the resources to minister to women in the same way. And so what this next phase is we're starting, hopefully in October is our kind of our target date to actually have it open and functioning and accepting people into our women's facility. So it's here in Grants Pass too, so we're really excited.
How many can you hold?
It'll probably hold closer to 8. It'll be a little smaller.
Okay.
And then we're also possibly looking at a property in Gold Hill, which might be, something for family restoration. That's still a ways off, but the goal for us is to minister to the whole family, because as you know, Brian, when you're dealing with addiction, it doesn't just affect the addict. It affects the whole family. It affects friends. It's kind of interesting, the collateral damage that's done by the addiction. And so we're trying to encompass more of that than just the addict, because honestly, ministering to the addict is the easy part.
Right.
But you have family that's at home that's picking up the pieces, who are struggling with trust issues and the history of addiction with their loved one. Well, he's done this before, he's gone to a program and things will be fine. And then they're just waiting for the other shoe to fall once again and right back into this pattern. So we're trying to develop the program so that we can bring them into it, so that they can be a part of the solution instead of always just being the one that the addict relies on to get them through, not using.
Pieces.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, exactly.
I've had more times where I'm working with a man or a woman, but usually with the men, where you see them get clean. They're starting to get clean. And the guy will express confusion because he's like, my wife has gotten really angry, because and he says, I don't understand. I'm actually doing the thing that she wanted me to do, which was stop drinking or stop using. Right. Why is she getting angry? And I would say, well, have you ever tried it before? And he'd go, yeah, loads of times. And I said, well, she's angry because what she knows is that you're asking her to trust you again. And that's threatening, because you have, every time she opens up her heart to you, every time she opens up her emotions to you, she lets you in, and then you come in like a bull in the china cabinet, and you just wreck everything in there because you fall back into your addictions again. So recognizing that trust is a long-term thing built over time, and that your addiction wasn't just about you stopping doing this thing. It really, you've done damage to your children, to your spouse, maybe to your parents or your in-laws, and your extended family and work relationships as well.
Well, and that's one of the hardest things for addicts to understand too, is they can't, they'll come to our program or your program, and they'll get clean, they'll be excited about their sobriety and moving forward in life, and then when they go home, they're not received with that same kind of excitement because of the history and all the hurts and the wounds, and those don't just heal with becoming clean.
Right.
As I always tell our guys, it takes time and consistency.
Yep.
That's what people want to see. They don't want to see, yeah, okay, it's great you're leaving and you're excited and things are good and you're doing well. That's just really the tip of the iceberg. That has, the real work begins when you start trying to restore those bridges that you've burnt, and people are going to be, they're going to be hesitant because you've done it before. Most of the time, and most of the people in addiction, it's a cycle. They'll do well for a while, then they'll fall back. They'll do well for a while. It's this pattern that they never get out of. And so, I don't use the term recovery with my guys, because to me, recovery, it means that you're trying to get back to a place that you were.
Right.
But what we want to do is we want to transform these guys so that they can go above and beyond that and break those cycles. Why would you want to go back to the starting point of where everything went bad?
Right.
Rise above it. And so, as part of that process, it's a long time process. An addict mind sometimes is just, everything's better now. It's the here and now. It's not, we call it the perishing mentality, in the sense of when you're in your addiction, you don't think about consequences. You don't think about how it's going to affect anybody else. It's just, I'm going to do what I'm going to do, because who knows if I'll even be here tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
It's just, there's no thought of consequences. But when you become sober and you start wanting to move on, well, all that collateral that collateral damage has to be dealt with if you're really ever going to have restoration. And that's where the difficulty comes in. That's where the hard times come in. That's where, it's easy to get impatient. Well, I've been clean for 6 months and my wife still doesn't trust me, or, she's still acting out. My kids are still behaving poorly. Well, it's, it takes a while to build that trust again. Once again, it's that time and consistency.
My friend Bill Gallagher would say, he'd say, when somebody would say, hey, my wife just keeps bringing up the past, keeps bringing up all my past mistakes and everything, and he keeps saying, well, for you, you keep telling her it's in your past, but then you go over and you keep opening the door so that she can see the past. You keep opening a door to it and inviting the past back into the present. And so you've got to stop that process, of opening that door. If you're going to get it behind you, that means that it has to stay behind you. And that means that, it's not just I'm the same old me plus not addicted.
Exactly.
It's I'm a new creation in Christ. There's something new that's going on, and we're starting new behaviors and building a new life together, doing things in this new way, because all those old things still, harken back to the things that led to my addiction in the first place.
Well, no, and that's exactly it. And actually, I taught on this last night. And, in Ephesians chapter 4, it talks about putting off deceitful lust and your old behaviors. And, that's where it has to begin. We can, as you were quoting, once we accept Jesus into our life, we can become a new creation in Christ. Mm-hmm. And so what I tell my guys, what I always preach to them is, look, the way this process, if you really want to be healed, both spiritually, physically, emotionally, is accept Jesus as your Lord and Savior, become a new creation in Christ, and then what happens over that time and consistency, the world likes to label people. Mm-hmm. Once an addict, always an addict. And I tell my guys that is just complete nonsense. Mm-hmm. Because here's the thing, you come into the Gospel Rescue Mission or U-Turn for Christ as an addict. The day you come in, let's say you quit drugs, okay, you become an ex-addict. That can be your last hit, your last drink, whatever the case may be. Yep. So you go from an addict, you transition to an ex-addict, then over time and consistency, that pull is no longer there and you become that new creation in Christ. But it's a continuum. You don't just... I've seen very few people who, for instance, came in with a raging heroin addiction get instantly healed the day they accept Christ. I've seen it happen. Yeah. But those guys, I always have a bigger warning for because they don't understand, the blessing that they were given by not having to go through the detox and rely on God moment by moment just to get through it.
They're so busy telling everybody, well, it was easy, just do what I did, just trust, let go and let God, kind of thing. And you're like, yeah, but you need to understand that what happened to you was the exception and not the rule.
Exactly. And what I've seen with most of those guys is they don't really appreciate their sobriety or what God did for them. And they may stay clean for a couple years or whatever, but eventually they end up back there because they didn't appreciate what God did for them. Whereas the guy who has struggled, moment by moment just to forget about getting through the day, just getting through that moment and relying on God. Once they get on the other side, they never want to go back to that. Right. And they have a deeper understanding of how God walked them through it moment by moment. And so, it's one of those things where, it's tough. It is tough, but what's better? Is it to go through a little pain here or, to have that miraculous happen and then end up back there? Because all those guys that ended up back at the beginning after being miraculously healed, the second time they've had to go through it, they weren't instantly healed like before. They had to go through the moment by moment.
Yeah, I've known guys that were instantly healed and never went back. But there is kind of a just a lack of sensitivity to those who aren't there, and then a lack of appreciation for the struggle in that sense, and I just kind of go, I think everybody's in a different spot in how the brokenness that they come into, and there's just there's not a one-size-fits-all. What we generally know from your experience and mine is that it's hard work. Yeah. It's hard work, and it does take consistent good choices over time. And if you're making this work consistently over time, eventually what you'll end up with is exponential results. You'll find the results that are just like consistent bad choices over time. You'll get exponential results as well. They'll just be exponentially bad, and everything. Well, so when you say we hear often the question of what's your success rate or something like that, and we're probably like you in this sense that we measure success probably 100 different ways. There is what we would call we'd go a real ultimate success would be somebody who comes to faith in Christ during their time here, somebody who leaves, whatever their issue was. Not everybody in our program has drug and alcohol issues. Probably half do, or whatever. But but then they come in, they do well, they eventually get into our work program, they find work, they eventually pay down any debts that they have or whatever, they get some savings built up, and then they either move back in with family, or they pair up with a couple of guys and say, you know what, hey, let's go rent a place together, or maybe they luck up and get their own apartment, or something along the way. And but either way, and they leave successfully. They're back into the community. They're working. They're paying down debt. They're doing those things that they need to do, and they're doing it well. That would be the what I'd consider the ultimate success. And in a year, if I have 400. If I have 400 residents that come through our program in a year, I'll have 100 of them that will leave that way.
Right.
But then there's like all these other little successes along the way that I go, man, that was really successful, as well. Maybe not as successful as I'd like to see, but still great. I see somebody who maybe gets a couple of weeks worth of good nutrition and sleep and is sober for a couple of weeks.
Right.
I don't consider that a failure, even if it is in the end that they leave our program either in a good way or a bad way.
Right.
I still go, yeah, but look what you gained. You gained in 2 weeks' time. They'll have gained some. They probably will have gotten their Oregon Health Plan. About 80% of the guys that come in don't have it, oddly enough, and maybe about 30% of the women that come through our program don't have it yet. So they'll have gotten on Oregon Health Plan, they'll have gotten their food stamps and stuff like that. They'll be in better condition when they leave than when they came. And I'd go, that's a success. It's not an ultimate success, but in a sense, I kind of go, but their story of where they're at's not done yet. They may circle back around and work it through. They may leave our program and go and join your program. Right. And so how do you measure success?
Well, no, and I agree with you. We have the ultimate success where, you see the guys go home and they become godly husbands, godly dads, and they're a blessing to their community, to their employer. That's what you want to see for everybody. But I see success more on a continuum, and you kind of hit on it. So almost everybody who comes in our program, we are not their first place that they've been to deal with their addiction. We're somewhere along a continuum of, they've tried this secular program, they've done this, they've been whatever. And so on that continuum, we're in there someplace as far as eventually you hope that it clicks.
Yeah.
But the way I measure success personally is I'll take somebody who's been involved in our program, let's say for a period of 3 years. And let's say when they first get here, they do well for a little bit, a couple of weeks, and then they stumble. And then they're out using for a couple of months. Then they sober up enough to come back. Well, they're back in the program for a while, and let's say they stumble again. But this time, they only stumble for a couple weeks and realize it. Then the next time, it's a couple of days. The next time it's one drink. It's like a continuum. And whereas they'll get discouraged because they keep stumbling, I'm encouraged because I can see, how they're recognizing the behavior sooner and they're taking the necessary steps to get clean, or even like you mentioned also, the guys might come through our program and do well for a while and then end up at the Gospel Rescue Mission. I see that as a great success, because instead of just giving in to those negative behaviors and those things that they're doing,
they're still trying.
Exactly. And to me, that is success. Like you said, it's not the ultimate success, but a lot of times there isn't a clear path that you or I could sketch out for somebody to go, okay, you do this, and you continue with it until here, then you will be fine. There's
yeah, for sure. There's always the, look, somebody asks, Well, yeah, they get jobs and they get a home, but how long can they actually keep it? And at that point, I can't really answer the question. Right. I can start counting up on my hands and toes how many people I know in the community that have come through our program and that are doing well and have been doing well for years.
Right.
But again, it's kind of like, but the end of their book's not written either. I mean, they could decide still to fail. They can make a bad choice somewhere in there along the line. I'm not promising any more than any program can promise, a perfect outcome for the rest of their days.
Right.
But what I do know is that in that continuum that you're talking about, that of all the care options that we have and all the other partner agencies that we work with and all the other different things that we do, we're now part of that, and so if they fail in some way, they know a safe place that they can go, where there's somebody there that'll counsel them and give them good counsel, that's somebody there that cares about them, and there's this door that's open because there are people in the community that make your program and my program available.
Exactly.
Because they care to donate to us, because they care to support our organizations, and to me that's really important. That's a super neat thing. To me, Grants Pass is maybe it's something about its size. I don't know. Maybe it's just. I've always thought that Grants Pass. I lived around Southern Oregon all my life, pretty much, and I've been between Medford and Eugene off and on throughout most of my life, and Grants Pass has always just been really, really unique. Community that really supports programs like yours and like mine, and I've sensed in the last couple of years a tendency to kind of almost an anti-religion kind of a tendency that seems to be growing. Now, I think that's odd I've always kind of considered, both Medford and Grants Pass kind of the Bible Belt of Oregon,
right.
In a sense. It's the more conservative end of Oregon. You probably add Klamath Falls to that area, but we are kind of this conservative bastion in Southern Oregon, but there does seem to be a movement within our community that says, religion bad, and everything. They'll say there's people that won't go to your program because you're religious and everything. So the question to the community who maybe is like hesitant about a religious program, why does a community need a religious program like what we have?
Well, I mean, historically, America's been filled, and part of what our Christian duty is good works. Right. And honestly, in our program, and I know in your program, although we are a Christian program, we minister to everybody, regardless of what their beliefs are.
Yep.
In fact, we have a lot more compassion on those who don't have a Christian worldview, who doesn't have that moral compass, because they don't know any better. And so we take them, spend more time with them to try to, of course, get them to know Christ, because that's the ultimate answer to whatever the question is. Right. It's Christ. But at the same time, we don't discriminate. I don't care what you are when you come in the program. That's what we do. We're all broken. Right. In Isaiah, when he saw when he was with the Lord, he said, "I'm undone, and I live amongst unrighteous people." And coming to the realization of who Christ is, and realizing how undone we are as people, right. It's one of those things that should motivate us to introduce Christ to people, but we can only do that they don't care what we know until they know we care, as the old saying goes.
True.
And so, yes, I invite in, they'll call me and say, well, I know you're a Christian program, but I'm an atheist. Can I come in? Yeah, please come in,
yeah.
But at the same time, kind of like in your name, Gospel Rescue Mission or U-Turn for Christ, we don't make any bones about who we are.
Yeah.
So they're not going to come in and, what, we got to read the Bible?
Surprise, we're Christians,
It's like, well, it's in the name, type of thing. So for us, we're willing to take anybody in the community. We don't care. We're trying to help, and it's one of those things where I think as Christians we take a little different approach because our sufficiency isn't on the government or government programs or any of that. Our sufficiency is in Christ and in godly people investing in what we do. So we're not draining from society. Actually, what we're doing is just the opposite. We're giving back to the community in ways that government programs can't, And so for me, that's an important thing to understand and why we're important to the community and what we do. And it's not just the faith community, it's regardless of what your belief is.
Yeah, it's funny, I hear in a lot of discussions, people will want to reduce the homeless issue to either addiction or mental health problems. And I understand why they want to do that because those are certainly big issues among the homeless community. But I think what they don't really recognize and that what we actually do and address is you really almost specialize in addiction recovery in a lot of ways. And we certainly do a portion of that as well with the Gospel Rescue Mission. But I think a lot of people don't realize how much actual mental health help comes from an organization like yours or mine, where they're around people who give them good counsel, who help them work through their anxieties and their depression and their traumas that they're struggling through and everything. In addition to that, if somebody stays at a Gospel Rescue Mission, I actually will connect them with some of the local mental health therapy providers and stuff like that, and make sure that they're going to their counseling appointments and make sure that they're taking their medications if they have any on time and all these different things. So while we don't have these institutional mental health facilities in the world anymore that are all government run, largely because we saw that in the past and it was so abused and so poorly done that we dismantled all of them. So what happens in a program like yours and mine is we are actually taking the time to get to know and love on and care for these people and give them some relational skills that help them to reintegrate with their family, with their society, with their culture at large. And we do it all at no cost to the taxpayer, not getting yanked out of their tax dollars and everything. So, golly, you kind of go, man, I know that we're a Christian organization, but we're doing this at no cost to you, that's pretty amazing. And we've been doing it for a long time, and we're not alone in this. We're gathering wisdom from Gospel Rescue Missions all across the country and across the world. You're doing the same with the U-Turn for Christ all across the country, all across the world, and taking all this combined wisdom and pouring it into what you do here. That's a pretty amazing gift to a community.
Absolutely.
That's fantastic to see. So give me an idea, let's say there's somebody here who's watching this video and going, I hear what you guys are saying. I'm a little afraid. I've heard a lot of bad things about your program, or I know we get that about the Gospel Rescue Mission. People hear all these stories about the Gospel Rescue Mission that most of them aren't really grounded in reality, but it keeps them from joining, and I know what, they're going to say, oh man, I've heard the U-turn's really, really hard and I'm afraid and everything. Maybe speak to that person that's what would you say to somebody like that who knows they need help, but is afraid to join, or walk in?
Well, and it's understandable because, to change, it's difficult. And it's a lot of times the fear of the unknown is very real. You don't know what you're getting yourself into. And if all you've heard is these stories and they might be negative, and let's be honest, those who speak the loudest are the ones that have issue with what we do.
Yeah.
And those that have issue with what we do are usually the ones that refuse to comply with the rules or weren't,
don't really understand what your reasoning and your purposes on all this stuff are.
Right. So the first thing I would say is do your research. Most of what we do, because of being nonprofit corporations, it's out there for public disclosure, as it should be.
Yep.
And so do your research. And the other thing is what you're doing already is unsuccessful, right? For that person who's struggling and looking for a program, they already know they're caught in that cycle of dependency, and you do well for a while, fall down, do well for... And when you finally reach that place where you're tired of that constant up and down, to break out of that is going to require some radical change. If you want radical change in your life, you're going to have to change radically, and so, do your research, take the opportunity to really understand what we do at U-Turn and at the Gospel Rescue Mission, and come talk to some of the residents. That's what... There's people that have come through our program that are, have done well, that I'll pass on, have given me permission to pass on their phone number from somebody who, I have an ex-heroin addict that will speak to heroin addicts, it's like, okay, here's what I struggled. Yeah, I'm not going to tell you it's easy because it's not, but the end result is good, and you're going to go through this, I know, because I've gone through it. So a lot of that, instead of me as the administrator saying, this will be great for you.
You're paid to say good things.
Yeah, right. Exactly. I would rather, connect them with somebody that can say, man, I was there, but now I'm here.
Yeah.
And, this program, the Gospel Rescue Mission, U-Turn for Christ, can help you get there. But it's not going to be easy. You're going to struggle. And so, to me, that's one of the most powerful ways of helping someone to be convinced of if our program, for instance, is the right fit for them, is to talk to people who's been through it, who are successful. Don't just listen to the naysayers, because they want to keep you where you're at. Yeah. They couldn't make it. They don't want you to make it. It's just kind of the way it goes.
Yeah.
So talk to... don't talk to me as the administrator. This is my life work, so of course, I'm going to speak positively about it.
At the same time, don't sit outside in one of the homeless camps by the park or something and talk to all the people who are failing about why you shouldn't go in there either, because they're, by the definition, they're not succeeding either, So it's funny, I get a lot of, when I get kickback on our Facebook page or on our wherever, one of our social media sites, I'll tend to go, I just invite them, I go, hey, I'll tell you what, why don't you come? I will bring you in, I'll give you a tour, and then along the way, you just pick out in your mind, who do you want to talk to or whatever, and you tell me, I'm going to talk to this guy, and this guy, or this girl, or whatever. I will let you talk to them. I'll walk away. You go do your thing. I'll buy you guys lunch if you want. It doesn't even have to be here. I'll buy you lunch here any day. But if you guys want to go have lunch somewhere or whatever and talk about, what's the stay like in the mission, that's fine. We'll hook it up. And but and it's amazing how resistant. And you can always kind of tell, when what's their agenda when they'll just go nope. No, you can't tell me, you can't prove it, blah, 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 and it's like, well, then if there's nothing I can do, then there's nothing I can do,
Right.
But in the end, you know as well as I do that for somebody who is curious, who's maybe a little skeptical, heard some rough stuff, if they just come in and talk to some of the people who are actually in the program, just talk to them. Say, tell me what's hard. Tell me what's going on. Should I come in? Should I not come in? talk to them. And they'll usually find the right answer along those ways.
Well, and that's life in general. Before you make any kind of big decision, you should be doing those kind of things. Yeah. And I agree with you, and I've done that in the past, well, talk to these guys, I'll walk away. They're going through it, get the reality of what day-to-day at U-Turn for Christ is going to look like. Yeah. And the other piece about it, too, is to break that cycle that we've talked about or mentioned is you need new behaviors, right? Yeah. And so one of them is, I know when I went to work for the government, for instance, the first thing I did was look for and find people who were successful at what I did in a similar position. And it was those ones I wanted to talk. I didn't want to talk to the guy who was struggling to perform his job, right, or the guy who was just there riding out the clock until he retired. No, I wanted to see the ones that were producing, the ones that were being successful, because those are the ones I wanted information from. So, so you're right. Why would you want to take advice from somebody who's not prospering in life or any more
at anything?
Why? Because obviously there are, some of the most opinionated people are the people who do things bad. I don't know how much parental tips I've received over the years from people who have bad kids, who are bad parents. It's just like,
it's like asking the same group of people, hey, should I get a job?
Yeah.
And if they're all sitting out there in the park, smoking dope and living in their free tents or whatever, and they're going to go, nah, hey, I tried it. I had a job once, and let me tell you, it was really bad. And oh, okay, man, maybe I shouldn't be doing this. I heard a lot of bad things about work. Maybe I shouldn't be doing that and everything. So there's just some common sense in that whole thing. Can you think of is there anybody that's just recently stood out in your mind as far as a resident or two that have come through your program that you're just going, hey, this person came in this way and left this way, that's a story worth sharing?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been doing this a long time, and there's kind of two facts that kind of stand out to me. One is addiction doesn't discriminate. I've had guys from the upper echelons of society, CEOs, professional athletes, to homeless, right? Mm-hmm. Kind of both ends of the social, economical, spectrum there of our society. And addiction affects them the same way, right? And the other fact is that Christ doesn't discriminate either. And he loves the CEO as much as he loves the homeless guy. And so what I found over the years is, those stories that have come across or through U-Turn are kind of the same way and are looking for a lot of the same thing. Recently, we have a guy who's in our program now who grew up in Southern California, was a gang member, spent 15 straight years in prison, and then struggled. Well, in fact, he got a life sentence without parole. He was done. I mean, he had come to the conclusion, this is life. I'll be in prison the rest of my life for gang activity, whatever. And in 2014, California changed its sentencing laws, and it gave him an opportunity to be paroled. So he went from this I think it was 2006, of receiving a life sentence without parole, ends up getting paroled in 2018. So he spent a large chunk, and he's a young dude, so he kind of grew up in an institution, very institutionalized. All he knew was gangs prior to prison, then the prison life afterwards. So when he gets out in 2019 or 18, whatever it was, the only way he knew how to cope with anything in life was his old behaviors.
Sure.
And so he ended up back on drugs. He ended up back kind of living that lifestyle. And he knew and had kind of resolved to the fact that he was either going to die or end up back in prison. Mm-hmm. That was his only hope. Well, along the way, he comes to know Christ. He accepts Jesus as his Lord and Savior, and he realizes that he could have a future and a hope. He ends up in our program, and he struggled at first because of the institutional mentality and the paranoia from being in prison and all that, and always looking over his shoulder, well, what's this guy trying to do? And the funny thing about this particular guy is he came from Southern California. Well, the guy who referred him and was kind of his mentor at this church in San Diego, I've known that guy just randomly since he was a kid. My nephews played football with him. They grew up together. He was always at our house. And he goes, yeah, this guy named Mike who had said he went through a U-turn, blah, blah, blah. And I asked him his last name, and I go, I know him. And and described him, and he was blown away. But he almost got paranoid about it, like, there's a conspiracy here, the old prison thinking. But then he started seeing God's divine, kind of steps that he had done. And as he started going through the program, and as God started really changing him, and, as God started showing him how his responses to stimuli, that he had to kind of put off that old man, those old behaviors, and that there was another way, and that there was a future and a hope, and that he could get beyond this, and that he wasn't destined for prison or death. Just seeing the light, kind of click and see a whole change in his personality from this angry, kind of violent guy to this guy who's just, who's seeking the Lord. He's still got a long ways to go, but just seeing that transformation of all I've known, my 30-some years was this, and now there's this, being shown that there's something different out there, and there is this hope. It's incredible, the change, and this is one of those guys that society had given up on. Society says, you've done stuff that was so bad for so long, so many times, that we're locking you up and throwing away the key. But because of God's providence, he was given another chance. He came to us, and he's seeing, that, wow, I can really have a life. I can make a difference. I can reconnect with my son and my parents. And
I wish that it wasn't part of the Barack Obama campaign, because it totally wrecked the idea. But the idea, if you ask, what is the need for a person who's coming off the streets, whether they're coming out of prison, or they're coming out of an addiction, or they're coming out of a financial crisis, or they're coming out of a bad relationship, what they need is two things: hope and change.
Absolutely.
And if you realize, if you can offer hope and then actual change, you'll transform the world, boy, and you'll transform their world.
Absolutely, and you can see that because you can manufacture hope. If you're good enough at selling it, you can manufacture hope. And politicians do it all the time, right?
Sure. Yeah.
But then when they can actually see that hope translated into change, that's when it really, you see the snowball of, okay, this is possible, and that genuine hope starts coming in, and as the change comes, then, it can start growing exponentially, kind of like that snowball. Once it starts rolling downhill, it becomes
really picks up its own inertia and big. And here's the other thing, is that we talk about, from a Christian perspective, when we talk about change, we're not just talking about random change, because not all change is good.
Exactly.
Not all change. I mean, you go from a non-addict to an addict. Change happened, but it wasn't good. And everything.
Exactly.
But we're talking about change, and not just change, but in a predictable direction. I mean, here's the thing that Christians do for the community. We're told to love our neighbors as ourselves. We're told that that's part of the way that we worship God. Now, whether or not you're a Christian, you want a neighbor that thinks like that. You would benefit to have a neighbor that thinks like that, because then you have, well, maybe there's, oh man, my lawn's gotten out of control and I've been sick and laid up because I broke my leg, but your Christian neighbor comes over and mows your lawn for you one day. What kind of neighbor does that? How crazy is that? Well, these people they have seen change in their lives in a way where their transformation is to be the Jesus that everybody really wants, and not the Christian that everybody necessarily thinks they want, but ultimately they'll say, well, you need to be, what would Jesus do? I've heard non-Christians yell that at Christians as much as anything, and this is what you really want. You want that Christ influence in their life, somebody who doesn't lie, cheat, and steal, somebody who cares for, people who are poor and afflicted, and that's exactly how you got here and I got here.
Absolutely, and see, and that's the thing too, though, is what people don't understand, and I wish those who are not part of, let's say, the Christian community understand that part of loving these people is also loving them enough to put structure in place and to put rules in place to help them to be transformed, So both of our organizations don't allow smoking. Both of our organizations require a certain level of action, a certain level of behaviors that go beyond what maybe a non-Christian program would require of them. Sure. And so, but to me, we do it not because it's easier that way. It's harder to enforce this kind of stuff, but we wouldn't truly be loving them in the way that Christ would want us to love them if we allowed them to, continue on with these behaviors. Because take smoking, for instance. Of course, health-wise, it's bad. Right. But beyond that, you're dealing with somebody who's homeless or an addict or whatever. Almost 100% of the people that we get into our program, when they were actively using, smoked. So why would we want them allow them to bring one of those behaviors with them?
Tied to the thing.
Exactly. It's so. Yeah, so, for us, whereas I know we both receive flack for our rules and the accountability and stuff, but that's the very reason, one of the ways that we show them that we love them. It's like, hey, we love you too much to allow you to continue in these behaviors.
And I believe, and here's the hope component, I believe you're capable of it.
Exactly.
I'm not the person that says, I don't think you can do it. I'm the one who says, I've seen so many people do it, I think even you can do it.
And you're going to have to prove me wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's the kind of the way I look at it too.
So here we are, and let's speak to how can somebody support a U-Turn for Christ? I mean, you guys do a tremendous amount of work that's really good in the community here in Grants Pass. You are a blessing to everybody. I know more people that have gotten yard work done because of your guys and mechanic work done because of your guys and just help moving and all kinds of, these guys are a true blessing to people in our community. What if somebody wants to bless you? How can they do that?
Well, they can contact me either through our website or whatever. Of course, we are a 501c3, so any donations that anyone wants, they can. They're all tax deductible, so which is always helpful. Of course, we can always use all the prayer support and volunteers that we can get. It's one of those things where, as you know, one of the things that I most dislike about the job that I do in U-Turn is dealing with the constant trying to raise the funds and and the resources to do what it is we need to do. Yeah. But that being said, check our program out. If it's something that you believe in, then get a hold of me. We can talk about different things that are needed. We also have a thrift store. There's that takes donations of goods. So there's many ways, and you're right. One of the things about all the work that we kind of do in the program, it's built into it for a couple of simple reasons. One, we want to, part of addiction or that lifestyle, it becomes such a selfish pursuit that all you think about is me, myself, my flesh.
Yep.
How can I satisfy it? So what we try to teach these guys to do is esteem others above themselves, be a blessing to the community, be a blessing to their families, to people who couldn't otherwise do it. We build ramps so elderly people can stay in their homes, things like that, to give back to the community, because the guys we deal with have taken so much from that me. So part of it is, one, it's a blessing for us in the sense that it does help us to raise donations and awareness of what we do, but also it's a blessing for the guys because they can see the excitement and the blessing of actually giving of yourself, and exactly, instead of destruction. It's like, wow, I built something, I was able to help somebody. So
that is so cool, man. That's a thing that that everybody should want to get behind. In a world right now that is really, overly looking for the government to save them and fix them and stuff like that. Your program, our program, here's two great examples of organizations that are doing amazing work. We have a long history of doing amazing work, a lot of changed lives, and we did it without government dollars, without with the help of the government. In fact, sometimes we're doing it in ways that the government would never do, on their own, and would say don't do or whatever, and yet we're doing it, and we're finding it to be effective and positive, and so I've always kind of just been, rather than tearing down somebody else's program or what somebody else is doing, let's just build it right ourselves and then tell everybody about it. And I love what you do. We share a lot of the same people. People come through our program and then eventually say, what I really needed was a part of your program, or vice versa, and we just really see you guys as great partners with us. So again, if you can support, if you're watching this right now and you can support U-Turn for Christ, I would just encourage you. There'll be, we'll probably have some links down below or something to how you can contact Kevin and how you can minister to them. Maybe somebody who could really benefit from a stay in a program like what U-Turn offers, or like the Gospel Rescue Mission. Again, feel free to contact us in all of that. Kevin, I really appreciate your time, man, as always. And you're one of those guys. I think it's like you're the best friend that I've had for years and didn't even know it. All this time. I mean, you're one of these guys that we can just talk forever. Thank you for listening. Thank you for joining us. You can find out more about us, grantspassmission.org. Check out our Facebook page, like and subscribe to this YouTube channel, and just get the word out on there. Of course, you can always donate to us, grantspassmission.org/donate. And with all that said, God bless you. I hope that we've been a blessing to you, and we hope to see you again on our next video.